You're checking in with the doctor for the greatest fantasy baseball podcast in the world, starring your hosts, Dr. Fantasy.
I'm ready to rock and roll today.
And Rydawg.
Harrison Masturbator.
Welcome to Doc and Dog, your fantasy baseball geniuses, presented by the Fantasyholics.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Doc and Dog, presented by the Fantasyholics. We are talking fantasy baseball today, as we always do. We are in the middle of our mini-series right now. My name is Jordan Jaika, a.k.a. Dr. Fantasy, and I am here with my co-host, Rydawg. Rydawg, are you excited for the Colorado Rockies today?
I am excited for some Rockies baseball.
I know you want to talk about Trevor Story, and we'll dive into that a little bit, but if you don't already, make sure you subscribe to the Fantasyholics on YouTube and like us on Facebook. But we're in the middle of our MLB mini-series here, so we are breaking down the fantasy impact of each lineup rotation, a little bit about their bullpen, and a few impact prospects. So I will dive into the Colorado Rockies lineup. Leading off for them is David Dahl, playing in the outfield. He's currently going pick about 138. I actually like David Dahl a lot. He's one of those mid-round outfielders with Conforto, Franmil Reyes, Laureano. They all go about in the same range. David Dahl a little after those guys, but still in the same range. I like him just because he's in cores. If they end up not playing in cores, that will change a lot of things this season. Yeah. But you know, it's a good offense. He's batting ahead of Story and Blackmon, Arenado. He'll score a ton of runs. So as a mid-round outfielder, I like him in that spot.
I do too. I think all of my sayings right now, like how I feel about each player, is going to reflect on them playing in cores. So I'm going to go with the assumption they are going to still play in cores.
Yep. With
that said, I think Dahl at this value is a really decent outfielder to have, just because you're getting hat-trick games in cores, and he's batting in front of a very, very, very decent lineup. So I would take him, and I would, you put him in the mix with Reyes, Conforto, Ozuna, etc. He's one of the guys I would take.
Yep, I agree. Batting behind him, batting second, Trevor Story, shortstop for the Colorado Rockies. Currently going pick 10 overall. I guess my first note on him will be, is this too high for him? I think that's the question. We've talked about shortstops at length. It's a very deep position. I really don't take shortstops early. I'll wait a few rounds to find a guy with some upside. I like Bo Bichette this year and the spot he's going currently. But overall, he's going to put up numbers, so it's hard for me to argue him being – I don't know about 10th overall, but a top 20 pick, it's hard for me to argue in that ballpark. 30 home runs, a ton of steals, his okay average. I think it's too high for him, but he's going to put up numbers in that ballpark. So tell me your story.
Tell me my story about Story. His away numbers really scare me. So we're going with the assumption that he's going to play half his games in cores. 10th, if I have the 10th pick, right, and if I see Tatis or Trey there, I'm just going to take them over Story. And it's nothing against Story overall. It's just those are two shortstops I would much rather have, just because they can play in a ballpark that doesn't need help. And I say that because everyone knows the air is much thinner in Colorado and the ball travels much further. So with that said, I'm going to take those two guys because they know how to play without the help. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to argue that Story isn't a top 20 guy, because he is, just because of the ballpark he plays.
Yep, I agree. Batting behind him in their outfield is Charlie Blackmon. I was actually really surprised when I was going through this and coming up with some of our notes. He actually is going 37th overall right now, and that was really surprising to me. And Charlie Blackmon's put up some huge numbers in cores. He's kind of slowly started to decline a little bit. He has no speed anymore, but he's 34 years old now. He's shown signs that he's not as reliable as he once was. And for 37th overall, I mean, I'd rather have a younger guy with upside. So I was very surprised. I'm not going to touch him anywhere near there. Maybe if we got towards, and I don't know, because we've talked about those middle round outfielders like Conforto, like David Dahl, like Reyes, Ozuna, Laureano, Robles, even Luis Robert. I'd rather take any of those guys 70 picks later. So I probably wouldn't even touch Charlie Blackmon until outside the top 100. So at that ADP, I'm not even thinking about taking him.
Yeah, that's the thing with the ADP. With all the Rockies we're going to talk about, the ADP is all assumption that they're playing in cores. Chuck Nasty is a guy that he is always consistent. I mean, his age is starting to show a little bit. He's still a 30 home run guy. He's going to get his 100 RBIs. His numbers are going to be there. The problem is outfield is so deep, and it's a deep position. But if he was there a round or two later, like pick 60, I mean, I think that's great value in my opinion. But I think 37 overall, you don't realize it, but you can get an ace pitcher there. You can get your Chris Paddock around that value, or you can probably get Devers around there too if you're looking for a younger hitter that shows promise, that will play every day, that won't need as many rest days. So going forward, I'm going to skip past Chuck Nasty, but I wouldn't let him fall too far.
I'll get a T-shirt that says that, though, if that's any consolation prize.
It's his nickname.
Batting behind him, fourth in that lineup, is Nolan Arenado. He's playing third for him. He's currently going pick 10.7, so really there's some people in 10-team leagues that might be taking Story and Arenado back-to-back, which I've seen that happen a few times, and I would never, ever consider doing that. But, he's one of those guys. I think even more than Trevor Story, Arenado's splits are they're concerning. Especially, I'll just make a quick note. We don't really talk about dynasty leagues very often, but more likely than not, Arenado is not going to be there much longer. So if you can sell high on Arenado now, I definitely would before he leaves cores. I mean, he has okay splits outside, but one of the things that kind of worry me is his hard hit percentage and the amount of quality contact he makes outside of cores is much lower. So he is in cores right now, though, so I'm talking a little more dynasty league on that end. But at that spot, he's going to hit close to 40 home runs, 120 RBIs, score a ton of runs, have a good average. So I can't argue with him in that spot. Third base isn't the deepest position. So if you're at the back end of the first round, I have no problem with taking him on the back-to-back.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, they're going to try and trade him like crazy because they regret giving him that huge contract.
Yep.
With that said, I can't think of a team that's going to take that risk when they see his game splits away. And they're going to think, if you're a GM for a team, you're going to look at this. You're going to look at his numbers for away games. You're like, well, I don't want to take this contract. If he was still in his rookie deal, I mean, which was a long time ago, or even a cheaper deal, it's into consideration. But you're taking him. I mean, you're taking on a contract that a Bryce Harper has or a Manny Machado, and those guys have proven to be better away. So I don't think he's going to move from Rockies. I know there's a lot of talks in it, but it's going to be tough to find a team that's going to take that contract. But with that said, if you're doing a redraft, I'm going to take Arenado 10th over. I'll take him over Story just because he's shown, it's Arenado, and third base is much shallow.
Yeah, and I agree with your assessment on the trade. I think in the end they probably will trade him, but they're not going to get very much in return, or as much as you would think. People aren't going to be willing to give top-tier prospects. So I think eventually they'll find a suitor, but I think they're going to be very disappointed with that return.
Yeah, it's going to be similar to a Mookie Betts deal because the Red Sox had to eat that price contract and they needed to find another team. So when you see Arenado get traded, you're going to see them losing out bad, and you're going to see a lot of unhappy Rockies fans.
Yeah, I agree. Batting behind him, playing first in the fifth position, is Daniel Murphy, who is near and dear to my heart with his run with the Mets. He's currently going pick 242. He's older. I believe he's 34, 35 now. So he's a guy that has not aged very gracefully at all. When you look at all of his metrics last season, he he's always been a great contact hitter. When he was with the Mets, batting right around 300, you could always rely on him for that. But over the past few years, he's struggled to stay healthy, number one, and he's also struggled to make hard contact or really make the same level of contact he did earlier in his career. So even though he's in that fifth position, I would, number one, expect him to move down as the season progresses. And but even in that fifth position, he doesn't have a ton of upside. He's going pick 242, so towards the end, but leave him on the waiver wire.
Yeah, and he was a National too, don't forget now, and he was very decent with us Nationals. So I think
I was trying to forget.
Once he left,
he batted 337 the 1 year with them.
Yeah, he once he left the NL East, he kind of went downhill very quick, which is kind of ironic because once players go to Colorado, you're like, oh yeah, he's going to hit so many more home runs. And we talked about into a previous pod, even DJ LeMahieu put up all new career highs once he left the great Colorado Rockies stadium. So I like Murphy a lot, and I'd actually take him if he's going undrafted. I would take him with the last spot just because he has shown in the past that he's consistent. Maybe he turns it around this year. Who knows? But I would still take him. It's a flyer.
At that point, yeah, for sure, it's a flyer.
And he's also a second base eligibility too. Let's not forget. So he plays first and second. I mean, and I would take him as a flyer. I'll leave him on the bench and see what happens.
For sure. Behind him, batting sixth right now, is Ryan McMahon, who is going to be playing second for him. He's currently going pick 201. And I know actually one of the leagues that you and I are in, he's actually my starting second baseman right now. And people have approached me several times about upgrading at second. And I actually love Ryan McMahon a lot. And I have him a lot. And maybe it's just the name. I just love the name Ryan. But going at pick 201, I mean, I think that's great value. He had a fantastic season last year. When you look at his metrics, he hits the ball hard. He makes great contact, playing at court. I expect him to move up in that lineup ahead of Daniel Murphy at some point. And if he's batting behind Arenado, I think that only makes his case stronger. But in a really weak position, McMahon and Lourdes Gurriel are my two second basemen in a lot of leagues because I like both of their upsides. So if you're looking to just take a flyer on a second baseman later in the draft, I think he has a lot of upside in that position.
I agree. I mean, McMahon is definitely a guy that people forget about because of, he falls so far into drafts, people just forget him.
Yeah.
Me personally, I'm all about targeting the second baseman to pick 100. So I'm all about getting my boy LeMahieu. And if I can't, and if someone somehow snags LeMahieu in front of me, then yeah, I'm gonna look. I might as well wait a little later and get a McMahon or, like you said, Gurriel from the Blue Jays, or even I'd get the guy from the Indians, Rays. He's a second baseman that had a lot of promise last year and very limited at bats, of course, but he looked really good.
Yeah, and that's always the position I seem to find myself in. Is I don't take a second baseman, and then all of a sudden I blink and it's the 18th round, and I don't have a second baseman on my roster. So Ryan McMahon is my I blink an eye, and he's my second baseman in every league. Behind him right now is batting seventh in their outfield is Sam Hilliard. And Hilliard is actually one of those other guys, along with Trent Grisham, who we talked about in another episode. Those are two of my favorite sleepers later in drafts. Hilliard's going 255 right now, so way later or undrafted. I think his ownership is around 40% right now, so almost 50-50 that he's being drafted or not drafted. He was extremely elite in AAA. He showed a little bit of potential later in the season last year, but in that ballpark, as we've mentioned, a big if, but in that ballpark, he has a ton of upside. He's hit 30-plus home runs in the minors before, so if I'm able to possibly get a guy that's going to hit 30 home runs that late in the draft, it's always a good opportunity that I'm going to take advantage of.
For sure, and especially in Coors Field, why not take a guy that has so much upside in general as a player, but also can only get an upside, and you also get to hit in Coors, so it's like a win-win in a way.
Yeah, for sure. Then batting eighth for him is Troy Walters, who's catching for him. Not many notes on him. I will go to one of the guys on their bench, though, who will be getting a ton of at-bats, and that's Garrett Hampson. His role is not clearly defined right now. He'll probably move around the diamond. He has eligibility at, I believe, second, third, and the outfield. Or maybe it's just second in the outfield now. But he's a guy, if you're looking for steals later in the draft, he can get you 30 steals. He has that potential. Once again, it really depends on the number of at-bats he's getting. But if you're looking for steals, he's a guy I'll take a chance on later.
Agreed. If he doesn't have a defined role, which does suck, he's more of a guy that needs a rest day or whatever. But I would still take a chance on him if he's there.
For sure. And then let's move over to their rotation, which isn't going to take a ton of time. We talked about this before we started recording here, but number one, not a very hitter or pitcher friendly ballpark that they play half their games in. And overall, they just don't have a ton of talent in their rotation right now. They have two guys on top. The first one, John Gray, second one, Herman Marquez. Two guys that have upside, but it's hard to trust them. So John Gray, I'll start with. He's currently going pick 237. He's shown some potential to be an upper level, we'll say top 30, 40 pitcher. But he still gets hit very hard at cores. And I'd say with both of them, Marquez has way more upside. He's going around pick 190 right now. He has an elite curveball, and he's the kind of guy, both of them, I don't mind taking them towards the end of the draft. And Marquez, I've actually implemented just playing him for road starts before, and it really works out pretty well for me. I mean, he has an elite K-rate, and as long as you understand you're only getting maybe, 18 starts out of him in a full season, I don't mind him at that value.
I wouldn't either. Agreed. Just has to hope he stay healthy because his road starts, his game splits on the road as opposed to pitching at home. It's kind of surprising of how good of a pitcher he really is, and we talked about it before the recording. It's shocked he signed that extension. He should have just let his contract expire and go to basically any other ballpark.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think I mentioned it to you. I think he'd be a top 20 pitcher or close to it if he was anywhere else, but he's not. Agreed. So I'm pick 190 right now.
And that's good value for 18 starts.
Yeah, for sure. And then going through the rest of their rotation, I don't have notes on anyone else here. A lot of them are the definition of average to me. They really aren't going to be fantasy relevant unless they have a really fantastic matchup on the road. Number 3 is Kyle Freeland. Number 4 is Antonio Senzatela. Number 5 is Jeff Hoffman. They also have Chichi Gonzalez listed on there. Not the food chain, Chichi Gonzalez. Any notes on any of them?
No, I think I'm staying away from the Chi-Chis and the Kyle Freelands and all those guys.
Yep, I agree. And then even their bullpen situation, their closing situation's a little iffy right now. They have Wade Davis and Scott Oberg. They haven't really named a closer. They'll probably both get their opportunities, especially if Wade Davis is healthy. He'll probably get more opportunities. But overall, nothing really to write home about there.
Yeah, nothing to really brag to mom about with that kind of closing situation.
And then moving over to their minor league system, they actually have a really weak system right now. MLB.com has them ranked as the 27th highest farm system, so really towards the bottom. So it's interesting to see what they do over the course of the next few seasons. Their lineup is pretty strong, but if they lose Arenado, Blackman's aging, it looks like it could be a little weaker. Their rotation isn't fantastic. So they might struggle over the course of the next few years. The only guy I have a note on is Brendan Rodgers, who struggled with injuries. If he is healthy, they'll probably slot him somewhere in the infield. He's been a top prospect for a few years now. Always struggled with injuries, but if he's able to stay healthy, he's a guy I might take a flyer on later in the draft. And with the season being delayed, he may actually be in their starting lineup come opening day.
Yeah, I agree. And Brendan Rodgers is a guy that always seems to get hot during in the minor leagues in AA and AAA. And then once he gets hot, he gets the call, and it happened twice now already where he's gotten called up and he's gotten hurt, and then he's just gotten set right back down. Other than that, the minor league for the Colorado Rockies in general, it's just not strong. And then you would think they would trade Arenado, but we talked about it before. They're not going to get as much as they think they will for Arenado. So if they can get any sort of somewhat decent prospects and a couple decent position players, they should really take it while they can.
Yeah, I agree. Any other notes you want to make on the Colorado Rockies?
Nope. I think that does it for today there, Doc.
All right, sounds good. So thank you, everybody, once again for watching. If you don't already, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, the Fantasy Holics YouTube channel. Like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter at FantasyHolics1. So we will see you guys next time.
Follow us.